What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another video. If you don't know who I am, that means you're new. I'm Mark. What's good with y'all? Go check out my other videos. Check them out. Check them out. But first, stay on this one. Welcome back to another episode of Debunking Gun Myths. I know it's been a good little bit, but I think this is, a neat little gun myth, I know this isn't going to be a very long video. However, I am going to be doing multiple, so don't even worry about it. Don't trip, dog. Don't even trip, dog. I got this. So, for starters, people are going to argue that there is some level of truth to this, and I'm going to explain where there isn't. So, on this episode of Debunking Gun Myths, revolvers malfunction less than semi-auto handguns. That is not true. That is not true at all. So, I'm going to get into it. People often make this argument. Why? They make arguments. They make arguments. They make this argument in particular to argue that that revolvers are better than semi-autos. They're more reliable. That's why you should get a revolver instead of a semi-auto for self-defense. And it really doesn't hold up when you look into the fact that, while yes, they have less forms of malfunctions, that doesn't necessarily mean they malfunction less. Now, of course, that all goes down to how you treat your firearm, because I hate to break it to you guys, but revolvers are not necessarily as durable as semi-autos. For example, I can't slam the cylinder shut on a revolver so many times or else it'll mess it up, but I can drop the slide on my semi-auto pretty much for all guns, maybe except for 1911s and 2011s, without risking damaging anything. So, I don't know. That's just, I'm more of a semi-auto guy than a revolver guy. You guys probably knew that. But regardless, let's continue on, right? How the firearm malfunctions doesn't necessarily equate to how many malfunctions it will have. If you sit there and treat your revolver like complete and utter trash, you're not cleaning it, you're not taking care of it, you're slamming the cylinder shut, realistically speaking, you're just treating it however you want to, I guess you could say, best and nicest way to put it, really, then yeah, you're probably going to have more malfunctions and more issues than you would with a semi-auto. And the thing that sucks about revolvers, when they have not even more issues, when they have any form of malfunctions, the only way pretty much, other than a light strike, because I will say that with a light strike, yeah, revolvers over firearms like, a Glock, for example, yeah, they probably have that beat because you can just pull the trigger again. However, with, for example, like the Taurus G2C, it has restrike capabilities as well. I can't help it every time I'm talking about how there are these, pros and everything, but I'm like, nope, I have to shoot them down. All I'm saying, though, is simply that, yeah, well, there are less types of malfunctions. That doesn't mean they malfunction less. The problem, though, is that when revolvers do malfunction, it takes a lot longer to fix it, other than when it's a light strike. Generally speaking, if the timing's off on your cylinder, you're having a lot of issues with your revolver, you're going to have to really disassemble it, and that's going to take a lot longer to fix than, for example, drop the mag, of course, a simple tap rack. You see what I mean? That's going to, having to sit there and disassemble your revolver is going to be a lot more effort, a lot more work than just a simple tap rack, or better yet, the worst malfunction that you can get with a semi-auto that you can't get with a revolver is a double feed. So, how difficult is it to fix a double feed? The slide's going to be more so like this, but regardless, you're going to lock the slide back and then drop your mag. That takes another second. Guess what? You check, make sure that the malfunction is cleared, you put your mag back in, drop your slide, you're good to go. You're back in the fight. Fairly quick compared to having to disassemble your firearm entirely. Now, another thing I haven't mentioned, and this is something that not a lot of people like to think about either, is they will go for generally the cheapest revolvers they can find, because they're like, oh, well, a revolver, it's reliable. They don't malfunction anywhere near as much as semi-autos. But what they don't realize is that a cheap gun is still a cheap gun. So, if I go out of my way to buy something, say like the Heritage Rough Rider, which I'm probably going to get just as a little plinking gun. Why not, right? Beyond the fact that it's a 22, I'm also aware of the fact that, hey, if if this firearm does malfunction, I'm going to have to entirely take it apart just to essentially fix it, unless the malfunction is just a light strike, which, yeah, that is very much so possible with 22. But regardless, my whole point is that a cheap gun is a cheap gun, and you shouldn't expect anything other than that. A lot of people don't realize that if you cheap out too much on any form of firearm, whether it's a revolver, a semi-auto, whether it be a rifle, a shotgun, whatever, if you cheap out too much, you're getting what you pay for. Don't ever think that you're going to be, that you're not going to get what you paid for. You're going to get exactly what you paid for, unless the company's just ripping you off. In which case, I mean, most people who are buying cheap revolvers, you're really not getting ripped off if it's not the most reliable. It's a cheap revolver. It's not like you spent $1,000+ on it. So beyond how you take care of the firearm, it also boils down, obviously, to the make and model. Of course, to some extent, if you take something like a Colt Python, Smith & Wesson 686, you're talking about some really, really good revolvers here. But guess what? They're also not cheap. For the Colt Python recently, I've been seeing them for like 11, 1200, something like that. Now, of course, that's a whole nother situation as far as the Colt Pythons go. But if I'm not mistaken, the 686, I'm seeing anywhere from 600 to 800-ish. I know it's a big ballpark figure, but obviously, of course, that depends on where you're shopping. However, last time I looked for a 686 was a good while ago when I was trying to decide what revolver I wanted to get as my first revolver. Regardless, though, in the end, just like how it would with semi-autos, right? Because if I get a super cheap, super crappy semi-auto handgun, like for example, we'll take the High Point, right? We'll take the High Point C9. Let's say I get a High Point C9, and beyond the fact that it's a High Point and it's super cheap and it's probably going to malfunction anyways, but if I'm especially sitting there not taking care of it, it's probably going to malfunction a lot more anyways, regardless of whether there can only be one or two kinds of malfunctions, which simply isn't the case anyways. But my entire point simply is that the number of possible malfunctions doesn't equate to the number of actual malfunctions. Meaning, while let's say, for a revolver, I can't think of all the forms of malfunctions for a revolver off the top of my head. Sorry, guys, not a revolver guy yet. Don't own any, but I will soon. So, keep your hopes up for me. It's not too late. But let's say hypothetically that, there are 3 types of malfunctions here. Just because there are only 3 types compared to, say, 5 with a semi-auto doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to malfunction less. There's a chance you might have those 3 malfunctions occurring a lot more often and take a lot longer to fix than pretty much any malfunction that you can get in a semi-auto exclusively. Now, some people might be wondering, why did I have to sit there and add exclusively at the end? Well, I mean, you have firearms, like, for example, firearms. My brain is all over the place today, guys. I don't know if you can tell. My apologies, though. That's not the best, content creator on my part, though. Regardless, all right, when it comes to malfunctions, right, of course, there are shared malfunctions that fall under both categories, revolvers and semi-autos. Like, for example, squib loads, light primer strikes. Regardless, my whole point is simply that, I mean, the malfunctions that happen exclusively to semi-autos, beyond being much quicker to clear, they really aren't super, super common unless you're working a old beat-up gun, a trash gun, or some trash ammo. You know what I mean? And realistically speaking, that kind of does all fall on you regardless. But I'm getting off topic here. Overall, do revolvers malfunction less than semi-autos? Obviously not. It all varies on how well you're taking care of the firearm, the make and model of the firearm. Excuse me. It all varies. And truth be told, when they do malfunction, it takes longer to fix the malfunction than it does for a semi-auto firearm. With that being said, I think that about wraps it up for this video. Y'all make sure to like, comment, subscribe, share, hit that bell. When you hit that bell, hit all and whether or not you agree with me on this particular aspect, because I know, just like how when I did the video talking about how revolvers are not that great for self-defense, there's going to be a lot of revolver guys pretty freaking mad. But regardless of whether you agree with me or not, make sure to check out all my other videos. Y'all make sure to stay legal, stay safe, stay dangerous. Have a good one, y'all. Peace.